John Abbott's written one book, but they divided it to three, so you can say you wrote more books. Yes. How many have you written, sir?
Written 21.
That you know of?
Yeah, I think 19 are published.
How could the others not be published? They're not ready?
They're almost done. Yeah, the proofreaders are finishing.
You have proofreaders?
Many.
Many? Oh, okay.
Many proofreaders.
Okay.
Well, I like to say good books cannot be rushed.
That's true.
Yes.
That's true. Orson Welles said something about that.
Well, read no wines before it's time.
Yes.
And I have one proofreader who's very picky. He'll go through the manuscript, and every time I use the word he or she, he asks for clarification.
So not a generic.
His rule of thumb is that if he's even slightly confused, somebody else will be. Mm-hmm. So he's clarifying everything, which is actually a good thing.
I was working on a proposal many years ago, and every time I would write this, they would stop and say, "This what?"
Yes, good idea.
And so I had to go back and clarify, but it was good because it added pages to the RFE.
And the downside is also, no matter what you do to, like I don't care about the he or she. If I'm only talking about one guy in the whole paragraph, we all know who they're really talking about, but they just want even a last name. But the reality is I'm paying attention to titles. Is it a or the or an? Before you got to have it accurate. Because I saw a Radio Spirit set I was doing a liner notes for, and they had almost every title misspelled. And I'm not just talking and the, but half of them were that. And I was like, no, it's got to be the such and such or a, or there is nothing before that one. It's a strange meeting, period. Leave it. And it makes, to me, it's a difference. If it's on the front cover of the script, that's the title.
There you go.
Okay.
Contrary to what everybody else may think.
Yes.
So here's my question. You started to write a book by accident because you couldn't walk because you had broken your ankle.
Exactly.
Yes. And in some ways, you didn't write a book. You created a database.
Yes.
Right?
Exactly.
With all of the episodes and all.
That's exactly what I did. I took every one of the Jolly Dollar episodes. I put information into a database so that at some point in time I could just do a query against the database, pull information out, and export it to a text file.
Right.
And that was
the book.
The first cut of the manuscript.
Right. So you actually listened to all the shows, which is
multiple times,
which is a novelty in the radio collecting hobby
these days.
Well, I had to, because back when I started working on this, the quality of the programs that were available some of them were not that great. Mm-hmm. I mean, like, we've had people go through and improve the sound quality, find better copies of them over time. But when I got my hands on the first programs, some of them were barely audible. They were trash, so I had to go back and listen to them, sometimes multiple times, to get the names, get the events, get the places, to write a detailed synopsis of what was happening.
That's one of the things that I think a lot of collectors don't realize is how much enjoyment and also the detail you can get from programs just because they sound better.
Yes. Well, remember UCLA did a study. They played a movie, and it involved sound. They played the same movie twice, same demographic of people. For some odd reason, I don't know why, but they said they tweaked the sound down 5%. Instead of the picture being crystal clear, they kind of tweaked that down 5%. But all they asked people were, what did you think of the movie? They didn't ask about the quality or anything. And all the people who had lesser sound quality did not enjoy the movie as much. And the study came down to better sound. In this case, it was a better picture. But yeah, you enjoy them better if the sound is better.
Because if you have to sit there and try and figure out what they're saying, you're concentrating on that, and you have no idea what the movie's about.
Right. So,
same way with the radio show. If you got to sit there and try and figure out what they're saying, it loses too much.
So I have great admiration for this, because I find when I sit and try to take notes during a program, I can't. And it takes a discipline to do that. And I don't know if it was because you can concentrate better than I can, and I'm a multitasker. So I have the book and have the story, and I kind of like hearing things in the background, and I'll catch things as they go along. But you captured a lot of detail in there that a lot of people missed.
Yeah, there's a lot of things like recurring characters.
Right.
Some of the writers would always pick a certain name for the police lieutenant or the police sergeant or
Right.
whatever. Some of the early writers, especially during the Charles Russell and the early Edmund O'Brien episodes, there were a lot of cultural references which they would throw in. And if you didn't think about it, you'd never notice it.
Right.
One of my just comes to mind, one of Charlie Russell episodes, they made a reference to Tanforan, which was a race course in California. Also happened to be a Japanese internment camp during World War II. So it's that. There's a lot more than the story if you go back and just sit back, take the notes, and try and figure out what some of these obtuse references are.
So did you develop a form or a style for your note-taking?
Yes and no. I would write. I came up with my own form of shorthand and abbreviations, so that I could, listen to a scene, write down what happened, listen to the next scene, write down what happened, and then take that and expand upon it into the database entries.
The reason I ask is I've been in the hobby a long time, more than 40 years. The math is too hard. It's 45 years. Younger or newer collectors, when I interact with them in some of the hobby forums and other places, saying, well, there's nothing that I can do because I'm new to the hobby. And a lot of the people who've been in the hobby a long time already know about it. What can I do? And I keep trying to tell them that you'd be shocked that even basic things like listening to the programs again, some of us may have heard them 20 or 30 years ago and just don't remember all of them, and just capturing facts that are inside the program, which give you clues to the dating, give you clues to how productions might change over time, and a whole range of things in them. And so I finally convinced one of them that they're able to now do this and make a very big contribution. I'm hoping that other people can follow your situation without having to break their ankle.
Yeah, that was not the fun part of it, believe me. But I wonder though. I get the general opinion that the younger audience does not have the appreciation for what radio was.
Yeah.
And for example, on WAMU's big broadcast, 4 hours of old-time radio one Sunday night, right now they're going through the 5-part Johnny Dollar episodes, and they'll do 2 Johnny Dollars, and then the next week they'll do 2 Johnny Dollars, and then the next week they'll end that series and start another one. And I was looking at some of the comments, this is too hard to follow. Why can't we just have everything at once?
Well, everybody's into binge watching.
Yeah, and it's the whole thing about radio was you had to listen.
Yeah.
And you had to
pay
wait.
attention, and you had to wait.
Right.
Right now, they've only got to wait for 2.5 weeks to hear the whole episode.
Right.
Back then, you had to wait the whole week and hope that nobody else wanted to listen to something else at that point in time because there were no reruns.
Oh, Dad.
Who cares about Lowell Thomas? I want to watch something or listen to something else.
But not even younger collectors. Let's put it this way: newer collectors.
Yes.
People. I used to be the youngest person at all the conventions. I think this is hilarious. But people who are just getting into this in their 50s and 60s, that just discover it, and they get involved in the hobby. But they're new. They have a cultural reference to the period, and they're wondering what they can do to get more involved because they're discovering programs that weren't the prominent programs that are actually incredibly good. Like some of the CBS programs, Broadway's My Beat, and some of which were kind of under the radar for a lot of listeners who just did popular programs. So they're asking what to do, and I think either we go around and break their ankles, or we train them in what you did.
Yeah, well, it's interesting that I started listening to Johnny Dollar, and I started enjoying it more. And every time I'd hear a new episode, I just started, liking it more. And once I figured out that you could actually go out on the internet and buy episodes of it, that just, there are no books about it, so, hey, why don't I just write a book about it?
Yeah.
I mean, I had plenty of time on my hands.
Yeah. Well, did you have a desire to write a book, or did you just have a desire to document it?
It started out with a conversation at work one day. I was telling one of my coworkers about the series, and they said, well, why don't you write a book?
Thank you.
Can I get you guys anything?
Yeah, we're good.
And I said, well...
This is being recorded live at a real restaurant.
Yeah, maybe I could write a biography of Johnny Dollar. Yeah, and so I sat down and I wrote down everything I knew.
Right.
And about 3/4 of a page later, I ran out of information. So then I just said, well, let me go back and start fleshing out information about the program.
So that was the interest to capture that.
Exactly.
So now it's time for Martin's question. So he has to talk while he's eating.
Okay.
Now you have a different take on the books. You're really into the history and the documentation. You're not listening to the programs to create something that like he did. You're actually going back to find as much source material in the creation, the production, the financing, everything behind the programs as you start to assemble this, because were you a history major or something in college? What was it that got you interested in working that way?
I don't know what got me interested. I just find I can't take the recordings and do a restoration job, so I can't do any form of preservation other than the history behind the shows. Over the years, I discovered the history behind the programs are far more fascinating, if not equally so, than listening to the programs. Bob Hope can be topical jokes, like you said, cultural references of the times, like in Johnny Dollar, but knowing them and reading, then listening back, it's like a self-learning experience. And so I want to know how much Tallulah Bankhead got paid when she did The Big Show. There was a rumor that she had bought a house in Maryland. She needed to pay the mortgage off, and at the end of the 2 seasons, the reason she didn't do a third is she paid the mortgage off. I mean, there's these little stories, and I find it funny that it shows people come up to me because I'm young. Oh, yeah. Did you know that the Green Hornet was related to the Lone Ranger? They like trivia, too. They like to know it, so...
Yes.
I always say research is legwork, so you have to travel to the archives, you have to dig, and I'm like a kid in a candy store when I'm finding a contract from somebody, it's their salary contract, how much they were paid, or an inter-office memo that verifies that somebody got into a fist fight, and that's why he's not on the show going forward.
Yeah.
I mean, you look how many people played Archie on the Nero Wolfe program, because supposedly Sidney Greenstreet was a tough man to deal with. I would love to read those inter-office memos. Just to know why.
Now, your most recent published book is the Duffy's Tavern book?
Correct, for radio, yes.
Okay. Now, there is a very interesting section of Ed Gardner's tax issues.
Yes.
Who would have thought that Ed Gardner's desire to minimize his taxes were going to play a role in the location of the recording of the show, the interest of the cast members, and just his relationship with people at the network. Right.
I joke that there's a difference between a one-page website and an 800-page book. John Dunning's book, I always say, is the ABCs. He'll mention that he tax dodged, went to Puerto Rico, and the last few years were recorded in Puerto Rico. And that's pretty much what he'll tell you.
Right.
My rule of thumb is, okay, now here's your 40-page history on the financial reasons, why this was a loophole, why he was singled out on the floor of the U.S. Senate for being among the tax dodgers, how he had to work an arrangement with Puerto Rico to bring in a movie as well within 3 years, and they would pay him $300,000. And the whole shebang, when you look over it, you realize NBC was losing so many talents at the CBS talent rates, they knew they were going to take a loss from day one, but they didn't want to lose him. And they knew this, and they still signed a contract. What company stops for a moment and says, we're going to take a financial loss? And the amusing part is that last season, you know how it ends at the end of December of 51, it doesn't go into 52? They still had to pay him even if he didn't do the shows. He was, in the end, worth more not paying him and not having the show on and paying for another program.
Who was that? Milton Berle had a contract like that, didn't he? When he went off the air, they were still paying him so he wouldn't work for another network.
Yes. He was signed by NBC for 50 years. Later, I think it was trimmed down to 20 when they realized they didn't. They got shrewd on a tactic. But when he wasn't doing television, he got paid.
Yeah.
And Bob Hope had almost a lifetime contract, similar in nature. But the history behind it, we listen to the shows, we have no idea what's really going on behind the scenes. I went to Phil Harris's collection in Indiana, his hometown.
Yes.
There were photos of when they were overseas one summer, and he bought a car and had it shipped to the United States. And he was like this brand new toy car. His car was going to be his new toy. And I listened to the first episode of that season of the radio program, and the story opens that they had just gotten back from a European trip, and Phil and Fremley are in playing with Phil's new car in the garage. And I realized they're taking real life adventures, see what's going on, and making them into episodes. Never would have thought that. It would have went over my head and went, okay, they went on vacation, it was summer vacation.
Yeah.
It really
There's
was
a lot
happening.
of stuff in the Harris programs that would go over our heads right now, but it's one of the finest, best written programs, and you can tell that people just can't control them. Well, they're finding a way to control themselves while they're doing the program, but there's a lot of chuckling going on in the background. You're the more prolific writer. I mean, I do a lot of writing, but it's business stuff. It's short stuff. It's to the point and things. You, on the other hand, have this desire to produce thicker and
I'm trying not to make them thicker. I just don't want to leave anything out.
It's his desire to keep Weyerhaeuser in business.
Probably, yes. Why are you a Weyerhaeuser stockholder? Here's the question. I know you have lots of books in your head, and you may have even outlined some. How many books do you have going on at one time? Starting with an outline and plus the book that you might be finishing up.
And research sitting there that I haven't even started typing, but I've made the research.
But you've gathered the research.
There's at least 20 books, at least. I have them in plastic bins. In the event the hot water heater goes up, and I don't want to lose it in the basement, and it is down there. And I've taken people down there and opened up stuff, and they're like, "Oh, you're going to do a book on that?" I says, "Well, I'm missing one aspect. Until I find it, it's still here." But there have been times when someone said, "I'm doing a book on a such subject," and I'll say, "I've got some stuff. I'll save you the trip. You don't have to fly out to California. I Xeroxed everything. It's all hard copies." And just one guy today, he emailed because I gave him a box a month ago, and he's going through it, and he's figured out which of the 4 or 5 drafts I did is the one that was the most recent. So he's working from there, and he knows the template. And he said, "Yeah, there's some material here I didn't even know existed."
Right. So do you start with an outline?
No.
No. So you just start with the topic.
I consider what John does. It's considered data entry. You basically the information's there. You sort all the paperwork out, and even if it's like, okay, I know first chapter for Truth or Consequences is going to be a biography about Ralph Edwards, mainly how he got into radio, his early radio career. Chapter 2 will be the origin of the series. So anything of the origin gets stacked in a pile. Anything that would be the early years, chapter 3. And I had stuff that I had about 20 files on nothing but paperwork about Al Baker, who took a golf ball and was told to hit it from Los Angeles, California to Truth or Consequences, New Mexico. 823 miles. Took him 6 weeks. I had newspaper clippings from every newspaper across that area as publicity, tracking down what day he was going through which town, and the stories behind the scenes. Huge stack. And I never typed the book from beginning to end. I never outline. I just say, we're doing a chapter about Al Baker. It's a story about it. I go through it. I put it all in there. And then the proofreader's jobs, after they see a 60-page treatment, is to trim it down to 40 without losing anything of value, because I can be padded at times. And then the next guy is supposed to go through and make it 37, and the next guy is to make it 36, and by the time you get to 34 pages, and you add photos, you're back to your 40 page.
So theoretically, a book could take you 20 years to do.
Some books are taking me 12,
and then you do all your collection. So as you travel around the country, you know these 20 ideas that you have for books. So
Yes.
so as you go from show to show or possibly even vacation, you found more ways to make nostalgia tax deductible. It's really incredible.
Yes, there is a tax deduction. There's been vacations my wife has been appreciative of.
So you just go, you know what you're looking for, and you go find it, even though you may not use it immediately.
Right. And if I never get to use it, I've got something of enjoyment, or I can pass it on to someone who may be. One example is The Mysterious Traveler. I think I'm about 12 scripts away from finishing scanning them in PDF, the whole run. They had 5 mystery magazines. I could go up on eBay or Amazon and pay $60-$80 for a mystery magazine.
Yep.
But instead, in the last 12 years, very slowly, someone's got them at a convention. Oh, well, he's got 4 of them, and they're $5 a pop.
Yep.
I grab them knowing that, okay, it's cheaper than what I've searched, but why rush out, spend the additional expense when I'm not in a rush because I haven't started on it yet? The real big expense comes to when you're getting winding down, and all of a sudden you need at least a few more photos. And
Right.
I'll tell you the biggest handicap people may not be aware of. I must have a reputation because there are times now in the last 2 years where I will go to somebody for a photo. It's not $10. The price is $40. And I'll be like, well, it says $10. Well, I know you're going to put it in a book and you're going to make money on it.
So you're talking about some, nostalgia dealers or some photo
Yes,
dealers?
but they look at it as, oh, Martin can afford it, or
Yeah.
oh, I know what he's going to do. And there was a guy who was buying photos off eBay for a book, and I got to he had a ton of them, must have been 40 or 50. By the time I got to the 13th or 14th on there, all of a sudden, all the others, he must have changed, it was buy it now. So he changed the price from $10 a photo to $25 a photo, but it was only the ones that was from that show on all of his listings, and I went, okay, he realized someone was buying them. They're willing to pay, and I didn't buy anymore. I said, you know what, I've got a handful, I'll come back 6 months later.
You need to be like the Shadow and have Shadow of the Pulps and have surrogates
Agents.
all over the
There's been a couple times I've had somebody I call up and say, do me a favor, buy this, because he's jacking the price up. It's been a month, he won't think anything of it now.
Yeah.
Get it for me. It's a budget. I can't spend more money than I'm going to make back on it.
So you may not have a written outline. You've got an outline in your head. You
Yes.
know where you're going to take it. And since you've done so many, it's routine for you.
It has become routine. And data entry, I've done books in 30 days, and then passed it on to the first proofreader while I'm on to the next book. On and off, research-wise, decade easily for a lot of them.
Now, was the suspense book your first book?
Yes, when I was in high school.
Yes, it's all through there. What an incredible idea that somebody in high school could write a book about.
And similar reason for John. There was no book out there that was giving the info, and I said, well, I'm going to do one.
But that was endearing at that time, right? I mean, so when you contacted actors and they found out, oh, it's a high school student, how nice. We're going to help them.
It's funny, I didn't realize it till Terry Solomson pointed out years later, because you kind of broke the mold. I said, why? He goes, we were all doing logs, not episode guides.
That's exactly right.
Titles,
That's
air
exactly
dates,
right.
maybe an episode number, maybe a celeb. He goes, they were logs. He goes, you did a book, writer. What year it was originally published and what magazine. He said, you went into detail. You verified the proper spelling of titles based on scripts. And I realized, yeah, I kind of, but I think Art Pierce did beat me to that punch on the Lux book like a few months before.
Yeah.
So technically he deserves that.
Right.
But yeah,
But you didn't know him at that time. This was right? Did you?
Right. No, I didn't know anybody. I contacted Jay Hickerson for his log.
Yeah.
I got hold of Terry for his log. And then I got hold of 1 or 2 other people and realized everyone's got inconsistencies, and that's when I decided time to do it. But they put me in touch. Oh, there's this Friends of Old Time Radio.
Yeah.
And it went up that way.
But where did you learn research? Did you have good teachers in high school who taught you how to do a good term paper and you just extended that?
No, I went to public school. I just did it. I will say each book's gotten better, and looking back at the older books now, like Cavalcade of America, there's now sources I never had back then that I wish I had.
Sure.
So I could expand, I could do better. 1 or 2 I am, others I just said, you know what, there's other subjects, it's good enough, I'm moving on. Some of them I wish I could go back and reprint, and it's just like, it's more amusing now to look back at a book and see how it's going for $500 out of print on eBay, Amazon, and that's the best price.
Is that the suspense book? You've seen it for that?
No, I've seen Have Gun Will Travel go for about $80.
Uh-huh.
I Love a Mystery for $130.
Right.
The Alfred Hitchcock book is going for at least $300.
Really?
Yes, and I really would love to redo it, but the contract with the studios is that I can only do 1,000 copies.
Ah.
So when the 1,000 are printed, I can't reprint it.
So I think that's what's one of the things that's different about you as opposed to other authors that are nearby. For some of these are still active properties.
Yes, the reason they own the copyrights is so they do make something off it.
Right.
The debate is online with a lot of people, well, it should be free. It's like, no, if they own it, they have the right to control it.
Right.
I have also learned, and this is the part that a lot of people don't get, you gain a lot more going to the source and asking for permission than begging for forgiveness.
Right.
Because there are times where, like Ed Gardner Jr., I called him up and I said, look, you own the trademark to the name Duffy's Tavern. They can't stop you from doing a book documenting the show.
Right.
Even if it's copyrighted or trademark, because as long as it's encyclopedic nature, yes.
Right.
But if you go to them, all of a sudden Gardner said, come on out to my house. I'm up in the mountains. I got a beautiful house. I was there for 4 days, soaked in real hot springs in the backyard of someone.
Was he there at the time? Did he know that
He was there.
broken in? Or?
Yes, I was there. He was pulling out photographs that were wrinkled, damaged, left over from a fire. What was his brother who passed away gave to him. He had stuff that were treasure troves. And if I had just winged it without permission, I never would have
found those. Yeah.
And there are so many books that I've done that I am so grateful I went to them, because they would, we got them in a rental storage down in Santa Barbara. Come on over and take a look at them.
What do you do when you go visit someone like that? Do you bring a notebook, computer, and a scanner, or do you take digital photos? Or
For photos, a scanner. For everything else, a digital camera. It is my life's blood now to sit there and literally do 3,000 snapshots of inter-office memos, letters, correspondence. You do a backup in the hotel room, an off-site backup like Dropbox, an email backup. Feeling content, then I can start deleting out of my computer one by one as I'm split-screen data entering.
Yeah. So, do you get access more to people because you have a resume of published things, and if you're doing something new, you would have somebody who was familiar with your work on a previous book get in contact with them as a reference? Or?
Yes, both. There's an excellent example. Fran Stryker's daughter, Janet, was approached 4 times in 20 years from people. I'm doing a book about your father, Fran Stryker, who created The Lone Ranger. Never one of them ever did a book, and she was very grateful to open the floodgates. When Terry turned around and I went to her house, she was very hesitant, and she had been at that point turning everybody down.
Right.
She's saying, look, I can't keep doing this.
Right. So you showed a bunch of books
and she opened it, and she even told Terry, this is it. After we're done, I'm locking these. I'm hermetically sealing these. They are going up. If you want to scan them, make a digital copy, so we have a digital copy. The originals are going up in the attic. Yeah. If someone wrote to her right now, the answer would be no. Before she's even done the list. But that shows you how many times the people who own the copyright's been approached. Right. So yes, having a resume helps, but you understand where they're coming from too.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. I'm sure that there are some people who are suspicious of this, and they want to make sure they're dealing with somebody reputable or may have been burned in the past. I've had some experience with radio actors who were incredibly suspicious of the entire hobby until we got them to a convention. And then they came to love us.
And John phrased it best earlier, which is the debate I've been trying to standardize the last couple of years. Today's generation looks at them as digital files, like ebooks. It's nothing physical. They can't picture a mental image of Amos and Andy or the Shadow other than what they see elsewhere. But someone says a Radio Spirits box set, I can envision the cover or the cover of a book. There's no appreciation. They can enjoy and listen to them, but to learn more about it's where the appreciation stems from. So books like yours and mine, I didn't know that he gave away silver dollars. I didn't know there was these auditions. And now they're getting an appreciation. And once they're given appreciation, they're much more serious in the hobby.
Well, a recent example on my part, I was listening to Jack Benny recently, and he had just switched sponsors from Grape Nuts Flakes to Lucky Strike cigarettes. And, they had these 2 guys on there who were auctioneers. And I said, I wonder if there really are. And so I started doing a little bit of research to find out who these 2 guys were. and yes, they were real auctioneers. One of them impressed the owner of Liggett and Meyer, R.J. Reynolds, so much that when he agreed to do the radio programs, they gave him a 20-year contract.
No kidding.
No kidding.
Look, that TV thing's never going to come.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Now you're spoiling me. That's supposed to be an article in the Radio Recall.
Yes, it is.
I keep up with that. I'm a member of every club. I get every newsletter. I love reading those little articles like what John just mentioned. And you go, oh, I didn't know this. It's the cool trivia. A lot of people in the hobby I've noticed of recent, they're not subscribed. Oh, what's Spurback?
Yes.
Oh, what's this club? And it's like, no, seriously, you learn some more cool things, and it comes automatically in the mail once a month.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Mm-hmm. I just found out that Spurback has put a lot of scripts online, including some of my favorite radio program. So one of the things that I'm going to do once I retire is start looking at these scripts, because there are a lot of them that the names are just different than what I've come to understand. So are these new programs? Are they missing programs? Misstated? Whatever. A friend of mine, Stuart Wright, who's a
good researcher.
Oh, yeah. He sent me an email a couple weeks ago. Said, what was the last Johnny Dollar program? So I wrote him back and said, September 30th, 1962.
Whenever Stuart asks a question like that, you know the answer is going to be different than what you expect.
He has found a script for a Johnny Dollar program that would have run the next week had the show not been canceled. So I need to figure out how to get back out to Thousand Oaks, California, and spend some time in the stacks, reading, copying, and that sort of thing.
I'll add one to that. Libraries have policies for reasons. And so sometimes it's a pain in the back end to fly out for one thing. It's cheaper to find someone in the local area to go out there and say, I'll give you $50. It's cheaper than airfare.
Sure.
Go Xerox a copy of this for me, mail it to me, etc. Over time, I'm starting to get doors open that apparently are quietly, and I can't say where. Oh, because more than one. Oh, no, we know who you are. Come on over. Just come. If you can come over on a Friday, the boss isn't here. We'll let you have access. Knock yourself out the copy machine.
And the best thing that you can do is when you go to a research facility like that, get what you need, and then you write them a check for a
donation. Yes.
To help keep the library going. That is grease on the hinges.
Yeah. It's not quid pro quo, but
that's Latin in case you didn't know.
Yeah, but
I figured that.
But it is a matter of they do appreciate that, and usually even if you suggest that, they're very appreciative. But over the last few years, a lot of them have opened up where I haven't had to travel out there. Give me 3 months, I'll have copies, I'll send it to you, and I'll meet them at a convention. They'll hand me a blank disc, and they say it's not labeled, and they'll say, might by strange coincidence have a whole bunch of stuff you're looking for. You might have found it on the floor, or you didn't get it from me.
Wipe my fingerprints, please.
And late that night, while they're now lean over to someone and say, by the way, the guy over there, I've got his check, just as a thank you. And, but they're also fanboys too. You'd be surprised how many of them really do want to see the stuff, even with red tape, and will quietly do what they can to make it available.
One of the things that kind of irritates me in a way is there are places that have copies of scripts, but they won't let you have them because of copyright.
Right.
Well, and then my biggest argument is, if there was a copyright on these things, why isn't the owner of the copyright enforcing it? Buy this stuff anywhere.
Right.
What difference does this?
They err on the side of caution, but also they err on the side of they don't know you.
Well, even the people who know me.
So once you establish a reputation with them, and they're confident that you're a serious researcher, I'm sure you get a lot more things than.
Well, there's a funny story to that. I was at the Cincinnati Old Time Radio Convention, and a guy came up, and he literally says, I'm trying to get a recording out of a library, and they won't make me a copy. I says, all right, I'm the librarian. what exactly, the exact words are you using? And he says, well, I introduce myself, I'm so-and-so, I'm a collector of old-time radio. I said, stop, you're done. He's like, what? I said, you're a collector. I said, what's the name of the place? In front of him, within 15 minutes, I had got not only to the librarian, I'm Martin Graham, I'm a researcher, I'm finishing a project on such and such. I understand you have a recording there, but to fly out all the way there, how much would it cost? Is there policies? What do you have? To fill out forms, and you can make a copy and send it. And the woman said, what's your name? And I gave it to her. She goes, hold on. She comes back and says, we found your website. You did such and such book? I said, yes. She goes, what's your email address? And I gave it. And over the phone, she goes, you should have can you do Dropbox? Yes. We'll have a link to you by tomorrow for the audio. Is there anything else we can do for you? I said, no, I appreciate it. Hung up the phone, looked at the guy, said, what's your email address? I said, yeah, we'll have a link to Dropbox tomorrow, and I recommend you download that real quick.
Absolutely. I get frustrated sometimes at some collectors who should know better, who think that there are archives and there are people who are hoarding stuff, thinking they're going to make a big kill in the marketplace. And there are some people like that, but they're not hoarding stuff. They have respect for the work that people had, or maybe a member of the family, and sometimes they don't know what to do with it, and they don't know who to trust.
And that, in this day and age, that's a big problem, because you have a lot of people out there who are ready to fleece anybody they can. And unfortunately, they do it with abandon.
Yeah. That's not nice. No. So, do you have any other books that you're planning? Are you planning to correct all the errors in your Johnny Dollar book? Just kidding, John. It's a legendary book. Okay.
Well, all legends can be improved upon one way or the other. But
and more information always coming up too.
There's new information that I have that's only available on my website. So I want to update the books, do some grammar and spelling and stuff, add to it, and that'll be probably one of my projects for post-retirement, which should give me something to do early next year. So hopefully look forward to a revised, updated edition.
One cool thing would be, I know a lot of those script writers like John Robert, they would write novels, and they were borrowing or recycling the same plots. There's probably dozens of dime novels that you could probably go through and go, okay, what's the difference between this version and the Johnny Dollar version?
Oh, there are so many Johnny Dollar scripts that were recycled. Yeah, John Lund would do one, and then Bob Bailey would do one, or Edmund O'Brien would do one, and then John Lund would do that, and so forth. I found there's one program where they took two programs, individual pieces from each one, to make a third program.
Sure.
Sure. Why should I sit back and burn my fingertips off retyping? I just have my secretary take paragraphs 1, 7, 9, 12, 42 from this one, and throw it at the end.
They would have to retype it at that time.
Well, the secretary.
Yes. But this reminds you, since you mentioned The Mysterious Traveler, when Suspense moved to New York, there were quite a few episodes that were originally Mysterious Traveler scripts. Did they get paid again?
Yes.
Did they get paid the full amount, or did they?
No, I think instead of making prices varied by shows. Mysterious Traveler was a sustained program.
Right.
So it was pretty much the cheapest that Mutual could pay as a filler, hoping that once they get a sponsor, they would pay you good money.
All right. So when Robert Arthur would say, I have to come up with a suspense script, say, let me take the man who saved President Lincoln or whatever, and let's do it on Suspense.
He probably got paid like $250, $300 for it, but who knows what Mutual gave him? Might have been less or more. But a lot of authors did own the rights to them. So Murder at Midnight was recycling scripts from the writers that were writing for Inner Sanctum, same episodes. And Suspense had the same thing. They were grabbing scripts from Creeps by Night, Inner Sanctum. It was the script writers were submitting it just to make a quick extra few bucks.
Yeah.
And sometimes maybe they got around the payment issue by changing the name of the author.
Oh, sure.
Like E. Jack Newman was also John Dawson. Who knows who else he was?
Jonathan Bundy.
And that was Jack Johnstone, yes.
And there could be alternates that we would never know. And still, years later, another alias.
Yeah. No, I've found that interesting. I've wondered at times if it was that the writer had writer's block that week, or just had so much to do that they had to turn on something quick, or if the producers were saying, "Look, we're on our last gasp of radio here. What can you pull from the archive that we could adapt?"
It may have been also that, I'm getting paid X times 3 to write for a movie or a television script, but I got to do something for radio. Well, I just reach into the file and pull something out, change the name of it, change the name of the characters, have the secretary retype it, and boom, it's done.
And the stories may vary. I'd love to know where Jack Newman came up with Jack Dawson. John Dawson. Could that have been his son's name and his sister's maiden name? There's one of those you dig far enough. I remember we did an episode, there was an episode of Have Gun Will Travel, and it was done on radio. Every cast character, except for Paladin, was named after a sister, a daughter, wife, two sister-in-laws, his mother's name. I took a look at Gene Roddenberry's book, and he had a family tree, and I went, wait a second, I'm matching the names just for curiosity. He named every member of his family after a character in that episode.
Well, it's interesting that Jack Johnstone did the same thing. Jonathan Bundy, Bundy was his second wife's maiden name. A lot of the characters in the stories were people that he knew, people he went fishing with, people he worked with, and on at least 3 occasions, he actually put his home address on the script.
It's funny. No one would dare do that today.
Oh, not at all. Absolutely not.
No. I'm trying to work on Casey Crime Photographer since one of the actors said Alonzo Dean Cole was such a terrible writer. I think that's hilarious. Because he repeats a lot of gangster names and things like that. And I'm trying to find out if they were family names, if there were names of streets around where he lived and stuff like that. So it's interesting when you start digging in, but you have to immerse yourself in the program and do kind of what you did.
There was an issue for the Lone Ranger that happened. They had a lawsuit because someone said you were using the name of my family, which of course is coincidental.
Right.
So they started using the phrase, all names and characters coincidental. But almost immediately, Trendle went to Stryker and said, okay, we know what we need to do, guys. We need to come up with a certain number of names. So they pulled out an atlas, and on the cover of the scripts, for radio scripts for about 3 or 4 years, for Green Hornet, Sergeant Preston, and the Lone Ranger, it not only next to each character had the page number, but the column number where they would borrow the names from. And then after about
from the maps,
from this atlas, and I've been trying to find that exact atlas so I can find out where George so-and-so is really coming from. Like, okay, it's named after George so-and-so, the president of Guatemala. Who knows? I want those little tiny tidbits for the humor. But then after a while, they said, we've got to have cards. We're just going to have first names and last names, and we can mix and match, but we're only using these. So going forward, if there's a lawsuit, they could say, honestly, we're not.
Came out as a result of a random basis.
Yes.
Or a systematic.
So every production had their own rendition.
Right. All right, since Martin finally finished lunch, we should probably bring this to an end. What's the next book or two coming out for you? Can you say?
Yeah, Tallulah Bankhead and the Big Show.
Right.
Which is all about, and it goes into detail, Bing Crosby's transcription disc system. He actually owned the company that was doing the transcription discs. And Jack Benny being bought out by CBS. It's the whole shebang.
And the tape recorders.
Yes.
Whole shebang leads up to the Big Show, why everything changed in broadcasting history. The other one's Truth or Consequences, the quiz show. And it's a funny part. One of my proofreaders he sent an email and said, I got to be honest, I love the first 2 chapters, and by the time I got to the 3rd chapter, and I don't know if I can use vulgar, so I'll be clean.
Please don't.
He says to me, I was wondering, what the is this? He said he got to the chapter 5, and he goes, what the heck happened? He said by the time he got to chapter 7, he started realizing, oh, there's more than just a quiz show. There's a town renamed Truth or Consequence from Hot Spring. Oh, it started the American Heart Association. He started realizing the book is more about what the show did and accomplished and the charities and the stories. And then towards the end it goes right back to, here's the last of the radio show, why it died, and here's the TV blend in and how the TV started. And he says, after looking back on it, it works. So those are the two that's coming out.
And you're waiting to retire before you do anything again.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I've got a number of writing projects. Again, redo the Johnny Dollar book. I want to do a book of, documenting my ancestral family. Only because, my nieces and nephews, my son, they don't know, they don't care, but they should.
Okay.
Because...
So you have a list of all the penitentiaries that they were in?
It's funny that I just discovered that my grandmother died in the late 70s, and in going back and tracing her name, I found a naturalization document that was filled out for her in 1940. Got to get all them foreigners, accounted for.
Yep.
She was an inmate in a mental hospital in New Jersey.
No kidding. So when they say crazy aunt so-and-so, they...
Well, the thing of it is, my mother always said, well, her mother died because she had TB. So I'm thinking in this state mental hospital, there was probably a wing for people with tuberculosis.
Yeah.
And that's where she lived. That's where she died. Of course, the state of New Jersey won't release records. I guess they think I'm looking for the mob and
yes.
all of their...
In which case, just go to the Meadowlands and you'll be fine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
50-yard line, right?
Yes.
I have learned a long time ago, even if there's restrictions, there is a way to get it.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, but I'm not driving to New Jersey. I'm sorry.
Sometimes it's just a matter of writing a letter to the guy who normally would be making the decisions on a golf course and practicing his golf swing. And as much as that sounds desperation, you'd be surprised how quickly they hand it to someone and say, make it happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what I got working. Plus, I just want to go some places and knock stuff off of my bucket list and take life easy. There's 1,000 things to see in North Carolina.
There are.
I want to see as many of them as possible before my expiration date comes around.
Yes. Well, that's very good. So thank you to both of you.
Oh, thank you, John.
You're welcome.
And I'll put this up online.